Hello and welcome back to my Anzac Cup tournament recap. This is the fourth and final round, and we are once again playing Starmada. We're going to be playing Rescue in round 4, and we're going to be playing against Varuna, played by my good friend Ed, who has made a switch recently from Spiral Core to Varuna, and is going on a little bit of a tear with him. During testing, one of my games got absolutely smashed by him running a cutter list. And he has also made it to the finals, so far undefeated. So we're the only two players. This is going to be winner takes all, and in fact, as it happens, whoever doesn't win this game is going to come second in the event. Again, as a reminder, this is my Starmada list built around two Psychop, Kappa, Raven Eye 3-man teams, plus a Zeta. In terms of rescue, I knew this scenario is going to be one of my weakest scenarios because we have lots and lots of points invested. Like all of my high power forward mobility is in Roadbot Oko duos, and they are both remotes, which means they cannot civ evac. I knew that going into the event. I did experiment with lists that had like a Lawkeeper, for example, in place of this second roadbot, but eventually the decision that I came to was this was unlikely to be a big event. It was really likely that with 4 rounds we'd have a clear winner. And that meant that in the finals, if I absolutely have to, I could play the game as Annihilation with extra steps. I could feasibly play to a 1-0 win if I absolutely had to, playing just like heavy defense, like aggressive attrition, whatever it was that it took, just to get a small win, and that would still be enough to seal the tournament. Now, ironically, that was going to be my opponent's plan as well. So this is Ed's list, and I like it a lot, actually. I know that he also had a cutter list, and he would play the cutter list in 2 of the 4 games. But this is a list that he and I had actually been working on. Primarily, it is his work. I made exactly one contribution, and that is the Squallow grenade launcher as a tech piece. Now, for a bit of context there, Canberra is absolutely infested with Nomad players. I turned up to a league night on a Monday evening, and I was the only person not playing Bakunin or Nomads, purely so that, like that, just to give you an example. So we had like Bakunin versus Nomads, and I played Bakunin with Starmada. And in that environment, there are lots of midfield repeaters, there is lots of hacking, and there are lots of Maso Morans. And if Ed was playing Spiral, he knows how to deal with those things. But in Varuna, you don't quite have the same tools. Varuna is a really interesting sectoral. Helots are incredible. There are good things in the sectoral, but it is restricted. You kind of feel the N3 design elements come through a little bit, where Kamau aren't what they once were. Fusiliers are still good. The tags are good. Knights of Montesa are good. But there's that gap. There's like that. I would really like a 7 to 12 point irregular disposable attack piece. And you can't have everything, especially Pano can't have everything, but there needs to be a solution that you have to build a solution into your list to Massey Morans on rooftops. Ed, and very rightly, he hates playing guided, but we worked back and forward on like, okay, well, what are your other solutions? And I've actually come to the conclusion that a Squallow grenade launcher is a really, really good addition. It does some of the things that guided does, in that it punishes, no, it doesn't punish null deployments, but it gives you a clean line of play against null deployments, and it gives you a way to potentially punch through Peacemakers in the midfield, Morans in the midfield, like that kind of stuff. And it comes at an incredibly low opportunity cost. If you were to build guided into this list, there are like all of these things that you would have to add. And if you look at what's in this list, there are no spare troop slots. Everything is doing something. Like, look at this combat group 2. It's ridiculously clean. 3 helots, which are super good, and a Pathfinder and a Peacemaker. Like, outstanding. Excellent combat group. They actually may have been slightly different, but you get the idea. Combat group 1. 6 Fusiliers, so you have a reinforceable core link. Squallow, Knight of Montesa, Zulu, Cobra, Machinist. Machinist might actually have been in group 2 on a 9-6 split, but again, it's similar kind of deal. You have Bigly Link, active pieces. There's nothing that you can cut out of this list to fit a guided missile capability. You sure as hell can't cut any SWC. This Fusilier link is built with very specific purpose in mind, which is that you have multiple rounds of potential ARO elements to bleed your opponent alongside the helots. So the fact that the Squallow is like, what are you paying? Well, you are not taking an NCO Squallow, which means that you're not paying an extra half SWC and 4 points, and because you have half an SWC spare for not taking the NCO, you can have another cheaper healot because the 9 points, 0.5 SWC healots are the cheapest. Like, this has come together really cleanly. I like this as a list. I like it as a tech option alongside the cutter for just like maximum go Burt. And again, Ed had 3 pretty significant victories playing through the day, through the 2 days so far, coming to rescue for the finals. Now, again, the interesting thing here is that I mentioned that my plan was kind of going to be, if I needed to, play this as Annihilation. And Ed had a pretty similar plan, which is that he didn't have fantastic HVT exfiltrators. The Montesa is pretty good. The Montesa is excellent. The Squallow is pretty good, and the Zulu Cobra is okay. And that's really the only 3 pieces he's got that can grab a HVT, a rescuee. But what he can do is just hide behind this hellscape and just take lots and lots of time to wear your opponent out. And then if he needs to, literally just on the last turn, run the Montesa Knight to the deployment zone and pick up one rescuee for a 1-point win. So we were both planning on playing a very Pan-Oceanian, very Annihilation-y game plan, and Ed won the lieutenant role. And on the grounds that his plan was, if he needed to, literally run to the deployment zone and pick up one HVT on the last turn when it couldn't be contested as easily, he picked deployment zone, and so I picked going first. So here's the table and here's the deployment, and I've actually chosen to not reserve drop the Zeta this game. This is a take that this is a decision that I make. I really like this table, by the way. We had to do a fair bit of talking about how to play things and what could and couldn't be seen, but just in terms of like aesthetic, it was easily one of the most gorgeous tables at the event. We had some good looking tables, but this one was mint. However, I will say that a part of my joy for playing this scenario comes from having the faction with the most climbing plus of literally any in the game. A lot of the movement paths around here, like the fact that I had a tag that could climbing plus up this wall and get onto this high ground here at basically like nil effective movement cost, whereas literally no one else could really do that because you could maybe get a tag to here and then up to there, but it would have been very awkward. And like you couldn't get a tag across this bridge. And all of my Okos and my robots and everything climbed all over this crap. Real like paradise for mobility skills. Very playable, right? Like there are nice, clean lines of movement all the way across the rest of the table. But it was a table that really let me take advantage of mobility skills in my faction, which I like. But because there's this big piece of terrain in the center of the table, basically I do a little bit of back and forth. I ask for Ed's help, and he very graciously provides. We basically just check, and I confirm that if I deploy the Zeta here, it cannot be seen from anywhere in my opponent's deployment zone, which means it can't be pinned down. And I'm not too concerned about like forward deploying stuff. Rescue has an exclusion zone, and also I know what's in Varuna. So I just place the Zeta here on the grounds that it would probably have gone down somewhere like that anyway. And what that lets me do is it lets me reserve drop my Bashi Bazook just to leave open the possibility that maybe it comes in from a table side. Otherwise, we have one of the Psychop teams here, the other Psychop team here. We have these EM mines basically in positions where they can detonate on anyone trying to pick up HVTs. My low-value target is over here. We have an Oko Roadbot duo there. We have another Oko Roadbot duo hanging out in this space here, expecting to tack aware. We have a Warcore here, just watching this table edge, and this table edge is going to be a little uncontested, except that I basically come to the conclusion that I'm not going to be able to pull my Bashi on anywhere. So my Bashi deploys as a Knight of Santiago Killer Hacker 10-bot hanging out there. The jig is going to be up on like the first turn. It will end up moving to here and placing a mine, but you know that's kind of cute. I have played Rescue before with the Bashi pretending to be the Santiago Knight, and it's a sufficiently weird profile that on at least one occasion I had someone spend their entire turn trying to set up a Trinity kill on it, which was pretty cute given that it is not in fact hackable. For Ed's part, what we've got is the Squallow is going to reserve drop down here, and so it's going to reserve drop watching this entire line. We have a Fusilier hacker prone on this rooftop. We have the rest of the Fusiliers are going to be hanging out here, but they are all going to be prone. Ed's plan is to blank behind the Helots on the first turn, maybe with the Squallows for a little bit of defense. and then the Fusiliers will give him firepower on turn 2 and turn 3. The Peacemaker is going to be down here. That's the only nook big enough to place it. And as a little bit of a critique of this table, it has fallen into the dead zone trap. And so what I mean by that is when I think this is Kev's table from Melbourne, when he set this up, lots of attention on what's gone into the midfield, lots of attention on what's gone into the deployment zone. And so we have these spaces here where a forward deployment +4 model would deploy, or a model that is deploying in an exclusion zone scenario, and there's not quite as much stuff going on. In my case, for example, like I could have deployed a model there, or maybe up here, and like maybe here or here, but these are very exposed positions. And Ed is in the same situation, where the Peacemaker has a really good nook there, with the Oxbot there, but the Zulu Cobra has just kind of hung out down there, and that is going to, spoiler alert, cost her. So I'm going first. I deploy my my Knight of Santiago, air quotes there. The Squalos goes there, and we begin. I've got this. There's a Varangian hanging out here, which can. I think it actually can Impetuous. It's going to end up somewhere like that. I don't think anything is watching it. This Varangian is just going to come up to here. And then otherwise what we have is we have the Zeta moving in very straight lines, basically going brrrt all the way over to here. And it's able to go like 6 inches down to there, 4 inches to there, 6 inches to here. And I think that's its irregular order and its lieutenant order. And so on the first regular order, it actually might have been like, anyway, I get a long way across. I think I'm actually able to like get to here, something like that. And there is a fight with the Squalos. And so the fight with the Squalos, it's firing 1 dice explosive round. I am firing 5 dice armor piercing, ballistic skill 15 versus my ballistic skill 14. And the Squalos takes 1 wound, which is a pretty reasonable outcome. And this is the point where Ed has to make a call, because he's put the Squalos in a position where it can nice and cleanly, it can pull back to here. There's a Palbot there, Knight of Montessa is hanging out down here, nice and safe. He can just guts back into total cover and be like, cool, I've drawn the Zeta in this direction, and now I will return to safety. That would probably have been the right thing to do, but Ed is still learning how to play Varuna, and he knows how to play Helots, and he kind of has an idea of how to play a lot of the other pieces. But there is a real, like, you need to have that experience with a tag to know where the limits of its resiliency are. And what he does is he chooses to stay standing, kind of on the grounds that he thinks he guts back very slightly, and he makes the read that he can basically, if I'm going to come down this way and continue to fight him, I will have to break cover. But I have a climbing plus tag, so we just come up and over this way, and then we take the fight from there. I never leave cover. He never gets that shot from me in the open, and we have another face-to-face roll. And in this one, I put him unconscious. And this is that kind of like, this is what I meant, where you have to make that call. It is very, very possible for one tag to do 2 wounds to another tag in one order. The Squalos, having lost a wound, should have guts back into total cover. It didn't, and so it went unconscious. And so I spend 2 more orders putting it to dead, but I do put it to dead. And with the Zeta now standing like somewhere like this, I'll figure out where I think it ended up. It spent the orders to pull back to here, and it did that so that it could basically have a riot stopper covering all of the positions a Bashi Bazook might turn up. It has done a ton of work. It's not going to, it won't do that just yet, but it's here at the moment, but it's fairly efficiently put down the Squalo. And Ed makes the comment that, like, that's probably the game. And there's plenty of play left in this, but he's also kind of right. That's probably the game. He needed that tag because as long as the Squalos is alive, it can be repaired. And as long as it's alive, and particularly at full health, my Zeta has to be hiding. It has to be really hanging out, hiding behind my hacking network, right? Putting him in a position where the attack into me is difficult. But if the Zeta is alive and the Squalo is dead, then I have the biggest gun. I'm in a position to comfortably out-pano, and that's really bad for them. So otherwise, what's going on? There's still plenty of play left in this turn. So we have this Roadbot Oko duo that is hanging out down here. This is the Group 2 duo, and it's going to just go like all the way up there, up and over this climbing plus up and around here. And the Roadbot, so the Oko is going to move up and around here, and it's going to end up prone on this rooftop. But on the way through, it's going to discover the Zulu Cobra. And this is most of what this combat group will do, but I discovered the Zulu Cobra and I put the Roadbot here, which is, you will recognize this from the first game, this is the your problem now position. There is a Fusilier hacker up here, And this Fusilier hacker is going to basically be the saving grace of Ed's defense. If this Fusilier was not here, I actually probably would have just pushed the Zeta all the way up there and just shot like 5 things to death that were here. Because this is if you've seen my video on table setup, there is this position here, the Enfilade Fire is just devastating. This is not a table that passes the Phoenix test, except that this is fortunately a position that Ed did know how to defend. This Fusilier hacker here means that any run with hackable elements around here, it's only whip 12, but I can't get to it. And also because the missile launcher is prone there, I can't just climbing plus up to take a face-to-face roll with the hacker, because the missile launcher will comfortably annihilate anything that tries to do that. Roadbots are tough with their no wounding cap and 2 wound, and no wounding cap and remote presence, but I'm not willing to cop 2 missile launches to the face from out of cover. So this Fusilier comfortably stalls this position, so I just leave the roadbot here, and it's my opponent's problem now. And that is going to end up paying significant dividends. So before the Zeta pulls back, it's going to pop up to here and kill the Zulu Cobra, and then it's going to run back in this direction, and as I mentioned, set up here so that it can adhesive launcher any Bashi Bazook that walks on. And the kill here on the Zulu Cobra is, firstly, it's a kill that I could get, and you take what you can get, but it's otherwise heavily informed by a game that I had with Ed, actually, where he was playing a list. It was a cutter list, but he just came in hard on my hackers with his Zulu Cobra killer hacker. So I strongly suspected this was a KHD, and in fact I was right. And I didn't want him to just be able to yeet forward with this thing, walk into my repeater network, and fight my BTS-0 hackers. I have 2 hackers. I have a reasonable chance in that face-to-face roll, but the best I can do is Oblivion him, and he can just fire Trinities at me. And I don't want to lose any of my hackers, because my hackers are really critical at stopping things like his Montesa Knight that's here coming up this direction, right? And his Peacemaker. I want to pin those mechanical elements back. So we've killed the Squalos, we've killed the Zulu Cobra, and that's honestly, I'm not sure. I think we got like maybe one other kill. There might have been a Healot that went down, but I don't actually think there was. Those are all of the kills I've basically gotten this turn. But that is enough. The Squalos, the Zulu Cobra, we otherwise just kind of position things. This Roadbot Oko duo here doesn't have a lot of orders, but they're basically going to tack aware, climb up these pipes, and they're going to end up kind of like prone there and there, just staged. And that's the bulk of my turn, but I think it's been a really successful turn. Ed's kind of mentioned he feels like this is probably the game, and I think I'm going to agree, but he makes a really game play of it. So his goal is to basically just, to the extent that he can, establish that attritional advantage again. And so he's got things that he needs to do. His goal is to unpick this Roadbot Oko duo in the first instance, and then otherwise make any ground that he can. He gets a really clean kill first on my Oko, just by having his Pathfinder here. Has to jump up to there, and then once it's jumped up to there, it comes around to here, and it's got a nice shot on my Roadbot, on my Oko. He actually has to break cover to get inside 16 inches, but they're 2 marksmanship models fighting one another. He's burst 3, I'm burst 2. He puts my Oko down with his Pathfinder and then pulls back to there. So this is the kind of thing that you can do with Forward Observer remotes in this season. Nice clean kill, I'm down 1 model. He then has to figure out how to solve this roadbot here. And this damn thing is going to sap a whole bunch of orders. His solution, though, is really nice and clean. What he does is he brings his Bashi Bazook on there, and he walks it around, and he just places an EM mine, and then he activates his hacker and crawls forward and back. And so he forks me between Carbonite and the EM mine going off, so I transform into cat form. Actually, I probably already was in cat form. Declare a dodge, needing 12 to dodge the mine, and I do dodge the mine. I dodge the mine, and he whiffs the hack, but he gets to keep trying that. And so he tries that again, and I succeed the mine the second time. And I actually make the call at this point to just dodge away, just to dodge I'm next to a wall, I guess this wall here, so with Climbing Plus, with the sort of Silhouette 3 of free movement, I can get up to here with my 4-inch dodge. I think there's actually a good argument I should have stayed there. This Roadbot will continue to be annoying for the entire game, but that did free him up to then actually do some stuff. So the Oko kill was really clean. The robot neutralization, I think, was good. I choose to chicken out at this point, having sapped, like one, two, three, having sapped 4 orders. But I could potentially have just stayed there and kept doing that. This is ultimately a fine play, but it was an interesting choice. So Ed has basically just enough orders left at this point to move helots forward into more annoying positions, and then activate the core link. And the missile launcher stands up, and I cannot remember exactly what it fights, but I think really all that it fights is it sets itself up as an ARO position, and it no, it doesn't destroy this, but it sets itself up as an ARO position, and there is a turn where the Peacemaker moves forward, but I don't think it's this turn. So the missile launcher establishes itself as an ARO position, having solved these elements. So to jump forward a turn, this is actually how things look at the end of my second turn. I didn't remember to take a photo until the end, but enough has happened, I have remembered what is going on. So, my turn, I've really only lost one piece. I've lost the Oko that is unconscious on this rooftop, and so we're actually going into turn 2 with as many orders as I had in turn 1, but more of them are in the first combat group. Oh, that's right, what happened? Sorry, yeah, the Fusilier stood up to fight this robot which was standing on this rooftop, and there's basically a back and forth fight which eventually results in the sniper putting this robot to no wound incapacitation. It's going to end up back here. That's right. Okay, so he manages to, he fights this robot as well and uses up its Panzerfaust. That's the last thing that happens in his active turn. That's right. So at this point, I actually remember that I have Smoke in my list and do not have to keep playing this game like a Pan-Oceanian player. And so that is what we basically do this turn. There will be plenty of gunfighting, but what we do is we slowly move our Varangians forward. This one just positions up here. This is the Group 2 one. And the Group 1 Varangian moves up here and cleanly smokes this line off. And it gets the smoke in a position where the Zeta can move forward to here, and then to here, and then pick up this HVT. So cool, we've grabbed one HVT. I think I make the comment that I have to figure out how to win the game at some point. So smoke here, Zeta here, HVT there, picks it up on the first go, rolling a 15, needing a 16. The smoke also just neatly deals with these two helots. Just cool, I don't have to deal with them right now. The Zeta then uses its mobility, right? So it moves back here, comes around here and climbs up this wall to go there. And then this is a bit of a risk, because if it goes all the way to dead, I'm in serious keck. But I do have my helper bot back here. So if I go unconscious here, it isn't the end of the world. I can crawl across the rooftop and maybe fix the thing. And I do have 4 command tokens still. So the Zeta comes to here, and I engage. I engage first the missile, and I kill it. And then I engage the sniper, and we have like a crits council roll. And then I hit it, but I only knock it. It passes its save, and it goes prone. So I suppress both of them, and at that point, we actually both realize that there's a helot here. It is a shock marksman helot, not a rocket helot, so I don't feel too terrible about the fact that we've just completely whiffed it. There's an ARO, and I discover, and he just responds back and he shoots. And I think I lose a face-to-face roll, spang the save, and then take a face-to-face roll, and I put it unconscious. From there, the Zeta pulls back to this position here, where it's watching this long line there, remembering that there is a Montesa here. So I've got one civilian. The civilian, I believe, is actually going to be in the dead zone right now, but we're nice and safe. Otherwise, the engineer is going to this roadbot, so tack-aware Oko. The Oko moves in this direction, the roadbot moves in this direction. Now the coast is clear, and I will recover it with, so the little helper bot that was here moves to there, and I will fix this roadbot. And then the bulk of the rest of my turn, because that's a lot that's gone on, and I've lost models in the second combat group, it's really just positioning. I spend a couple of orders moving this link team out and around to here. So the Psychop comes to there, the Hacker comes to there, the Varangian comes to there, and we actually move the War Correspondent, I think, as well. Yeah, so she was here, but I know where the Bashi Bazooka is now, so we hop up onto the stairs and move there, and that's her irregular. Ed then has to attack into this once again, and he's continuing to sustain damage. But I think he makes a good play, it's just that the game is getting harder and harder for him to win. So his play this turn is to move the Peacemaker out, and it basically comes up this direction. This fire lane is still comfortably under his control, like he can't contest the Zeta just yet, but this sniper is comfortably locking down this fire lane, sort of like underneath the stairs and through here. So he is able to move the Peacemaker out, and what he does is he yeets to detonate this mine, he yeets the Oxbot around to here, while the Peacemaker moves forward to there, and the Oxbot kills the Varangian. I actually succeed, I fail my dodge but succeed my save, and then a variety of shots take out the Oxbot, and then the Peacemaker just retreats. Otherwise, he moves his paramedic team around here, around to recover this healot. And he might have even recovered something else, but I don't think he does. So this healot stands back up. He's solved this problem. He's put this Varangian down, so there's no more smoke on this flank. But that is the bulk of what he is able to accomplish this turn. This roadbot, in my turn, using the Group 2 orders, has moved down to here. So this approach is looking like worse and worse and worse. And that's only so much. Like, he's killed one more model in Group 2, so my Group 2 is continuing to hemorrhage. My Group 1 is still very strong. Once again, this is a picture at the end of my third turn. I actually probably should keep taking photos this way because I think it makes it easier to show what's going on. The Zeta, as you can see, has pulled all the way back. It has played no more role in this game. It used its tack aware and its lieutenant order to pull all the way back to there. The worst thing that could happen to me this turn is for the Zeta to die. The Zeta needs to just not die. By getting back to my deployment zone, I make it much harder for Ed to answer those points. And I also put myself in a position to potentially score a 5-point win for the major. Otherwise, a lot of things will have staged themselves, but we'll get to that. The rest of this turn is this link team here, which is intact. So the Psychop-led team moves up and across the bridge here and takes a fight with this Healot. And at this point, we have what I would call the Ed Healot effect. He doesn't crit me. I'm going to count myself lucky, but it takes basically my entire turn to kill a Healot, which is not ideal, but it is what it is. I put the Healot down. I knock it prone. Like, there's three gunfights with a Psychop marksman versus a Shock marksman Healot in good range. He's on 8s, 3 dice on 8s, I'm 4 dice on 13s. We go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. He like passes a save, and eventually fails his guts and drops prone. And so I just run at him with the Psychop, and I fire burst 3 heavy pistols at short range, and finally put the little bastard down. I'm doing this because Ed's HVT is here, and I need to get my Psychop with its MSV in zone of control and line of sight, which I do, pass a check, do my classified. So I've got HVT in my zone and a classified, which is actually going to be 5 objective points potentially. And the entire rest of the turn is everything stands up in the most annoying possible places. The only model I care about losing for the rest of the game is the Zeta, and so it is as far back as possible, although it is still watching this line. So this line there, but there's really nothing that can. The only thing that could kill it is the Fusilier. So my goal is just to make sure that anything moving across this part of the table, this part of the table, or this part of the table is as horrifically contested as possible. So we have the Warcore has jumped up to here. This Psychop has moved to here. This Psychop team then pulls back. Standing Psychop, standing Raven Eye, prone Kappa Hacker. And then we have even the engineer has stood up. We have a robot standing here. It's full health, albeit unloaded. We have a robot standing here. It's full health and has its Panzerfaust. Everything is on ARO. Ignore this prone marker. It's just left there as an artifact. Everything is watching. The only thing that's not on ARO, because I've kept converting its irregular orders regular, is this Bashi Bazook. So into this absolute hellscape of, like, this would be a terrible decision if Ed had any guns or it wasn't turn 3, but it is, those two circumstances exist, so we are just defending for all get out. So Ed basically looks at the board and, like, he had not unreasonably made up his mind that the game was going to be very difficult or potentially a loss from that first engagement between the tags. But he makes a really gameplay of it, and he's been setting up the conditions that might give him a chance. We have some Healot, like, surprise attacks that move forward, but they're only burst 1 inactive. They are not able to dislodge either the Warcore or the Psychop, but the Montesa basically makes the run, and he makes the run this direction, and actually makes his dodge against a Zeta, a Psychop, and the Panzerfaust. The Warcore can't see, this tower is in the way. But he beats all 3 of those things, dodges around there, and then runs in this direction. And then he moves around here, and he has to fight the Psychop, and he basically, like, takes the fight. He takes 1 wound because I'm firing double action rounds, and then he just has to run for it. He doesn't have enough orders. And the run for it puts him through, so he's in the open against the Psychop. I actually split the link, so the Kappa takes a hack, the Psychop takes a shot, and the Psychop crits. And so the Montesa goes down. If everything had gone perfectly, and the combi rifle is just, like, firing at 40 inches or 32 inches the entire way. If everything had gone perfectly, I actually don't think he had enough orders to get to this HVT and back to his deployment zone. I would still have won in that circumstance because he couldn't do his classified and I had done mine. So it would have been a like very low scoring win because no one would have had the points for more HVTs in deployment zone. But as it was, he was really just trying to get to just the one, just get to and synchronize with this civilian. But the Montesa making the run didn't make it through Overwatch from the Psychop, went down. And at that point, there's nothing left for Ed to do. The only things that he's got like two orders, he can't do his classified. His classified is coup de grace, is extreme prejudice. He could have taken some fights with Fusiliers, but that would not have scored him any points. If I'd won those fights, he'd have had, he'd have done some VP damage, but that isn't a meaningful tiebreaker. So this is going to be a relatively low scoring win, but that was both players' plans. It's going to be 5-0, although it could have been much tighter. Either of us would have been willing to play to a 1-0 win if we'd needed to, because that would have been enough to secure the event. So that puts me on 1 bye and 3 wins, 3 major wins actually. So that's something like, what's that? 4 plus 4 plus 4 is 12. So I think that's something like 17. It would have been 16 or 17 tournament points. And no one else was quite within shouting distance of that. So that was enough to secure me first place. But for his performance, Ed had, I think, like slathered his way through three good games, he said. But I believe he was on 3 major wins. And 3 major wins with some ties that other players had. I think we had in the final 2 rounds, we had a couple of ties between high ranked tables. Meant that, so I was first, Ed was second, and then actually in third and fourth, we had third was Zephyr from Sydney, and then fourth was Jacob from Melbourne. So in the top 4, we had people from every one of the cities who had attended, which is really cool, really nice spread to have the top 4 have like literally Canberra, Sydney, and Melbourne is really cool. The metas are increasingly closely matched, really good players from all of them. And it was a great event. The charity that it was supporting was Soldier On, which the Australian Defence Wargaming Association regularly does, and really happy with the layout actually of this event. Two days with 2 rounds per day, late start on the first day to allow people to drive, early finish on the second day. We had a nice social event on the evening of at the Kingston Hotel, where we talked a whole bunch of crap and invented an entirely new tournament variant, which I think could actually be really interesting. Talked about the reinforcement mechanic that has been teased by Corvus Belli. Like, just a great night. Great piss up with the lads, snitchel and pub food. And then 2 rounds a day is nice and relaxed. You don't have that, like, third round, nothing left in the tank, 3 rounds in any given day. So really enjoyed this. Crisp autumn weather that made way to kind of like wet, soggy weather on day 2, but just generally an excellent 2 days. So big thanks to Rob Wright who organised it. Massive thanks to all the Melbourne guys who made them huge drive or flight up, and even to the people from Sydney. We had 2 people from Sydney who made the 3-hour drive down on day 1, 3-hour drive home on day 2. Just fantastic. So a great 2 days. Hope you enjoyed these reports and more to come.